Do you find it difficult to make and maintain friends? Or maybe you're just lonely, or maybe you just don't like people. I feel that way sometimes.
I feel it all the time.
Yeah. Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at friendships and looking at maybe why they're important, maybe why they suck, and everything else about them, particularly from an existential and a stoic point of view. So, welcome. This is the Existential Stoic podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, man?
Oh, this is an exciting one because, like I mentioned just before we started this, I've been pruning some people out of my life recently, and it has been, yeah, it's challenging. It's really challenging to set those boundaries because on one hand, you want to be kind and you want to
Yeah,
be forgiving and you want to be like the type of person who can accept other people changing. But on the other hand, some people just don't want to change. And like sometimes you
yeah.
just have to say no. Yeah.
Do you do you make a distinction between like mentally make a distinction between like maybe like friends and acquaintances or like better friends or
Yeah.
worse friends? I mean, some kind of distinction between the relationships you have, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely a acquaintances, like people that I know and that I'm friendly with, and then like friends, like you, people who I can
Yeah.
talk with anything about.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yeah.
it's trying to get the acquaintances to be bridged into friends, which is where I've been running into difficulties recently because I'm very fortunate in that I have a few very close friends. Like we do this podcast, we chat a couple
Yeah.
times a
Yeah.
week,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like it's incredible. It's life changing, and so very fortunate for that. And some other, and also because of like how easy it is with technology nowadays, it's great to be able to keep up with people in locations other than where you're living. But I moved about a year ago, and since then it's been like a constant struggle of trying to like bridge acquaintances to become friends. And it's
Yeah.
just so far it's been mostly unsuccessful. If if
It's fun.
if success actually means someone coming from, well, actually that's a good point. Because
Yeah.
I've
I
been
mean, what?
looking at
Yeah.
success as being bringing someone from acquaintance to friend, but maybe success is actually defining what I want in a friend and then just being patient until that person arrives.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was thinking about with Aristotle, he says, friendships are the greatest external goods, but he makes a clear distinction between like perfect friendship and like basically acquaintances, right? And that's fine. We all have a lot of acquaintances, people that we're friendly with, that we see, that we interact with, but that we don't like. We're not gonna, go out of our way to do stuff, not thinking about them otherwise and all that. But he also thought that these, really good friendships are hard. They take a lot of effort. In the sense that like it doesn't. It's not that it feels hard to maintain, but that like it's gonna take time. Like we chat every week. It takes time to like you have to know each other and stuff, and it might take just time in the sense that like you have to know them for a long time to really know the person before you can like bridge that gap, maybe. And I think so. I think it's interesting. And one of the other things he seems to suggest is that these acquaintances can move over to friendship when we have like things in common. For him, it was related to character. So like when you have similar goodness about you, that can be a starting point because then through friendship you're supposed to grow in virtue too. So you're supposed to become a better person. So it makes sense that you'd want to be in a similar kind of place so that you could each grow equally as you engage in a relationship. But you need somebody then that also wants to basically be a better person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, which makes it hard.
yeah, so we just did a quick fix on how to stop deluding yourself. And one of the things
Yeah.
I came up with there was, look for where people are telling you the same thing and you think differently. And maybe there's a truth there.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's something you need to look at. So a couple of these people that have been pruned out of my life recently, it was because they just like we would make plans, and then right before the plans, they would say, something else came up. And the first time I'm like, okay, cool, whatever, that happens. The
Yeah.
next time I was like,
Yeah.
really? Like again? And then the third time I was like, this is becoming a pattern. Like what's going on
Yeah.
here? You know? And so like with both of them, I tried to like give some feedback, Because I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
when we make plans, I need to adjust my schedule so that I can be there. And then when you cancel, that sucks because I've stopped doing other stuff to make that time for you. And it's, it's
Yeah.
inconvenient for me. But granted, this could be due to my fetish with like time and being on time and being your word and everything like that. So I get like my responsibility. And like both times they were just like, that doesn't, I don't even see I don't see your point. Like, and the worst part was that like one of them, I really saw very clearly that he just didn't value me at all. Like it was
Well,
inconsequential that it would be impacting me. Like it was
yeah,
so.
that's the yeah.
So anyways,
Well, that's just it though, right? There, no, but I think that's hitting the nail on the head though, right? Is that like if you're making plans with somebody, you know, that there should be like some reciprocation of respect, right? Where you feel like you should, like I feel bad if we have to cancel for some reason, or I have to cancel our normal meeting time for some reason. I always feel bad, and I always want to give you an explanation and tell you as soon as I can. Although I know that's not going to be a problem, but that's not the point. You know what I mean? Like I know it's not going to be like the end of the world, but it's like you want to make sure that like because I do value you and I respect your time and stuff, and I don't want I think that's important too. There has to be kind of some you know caring for the other person right there where
yeah,
they matter that
yeah,
so you can have that type of thing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with this though. I think it's hard. I think for a lot of people. I mean, I know just seeing running to people and talking to people, like people trying to meet people when they move to new places, especially like when trying to make friends is really difficult as you get older. I think people have a hard time talking to other people, so it's a difficult kind of thing. And then because we want to have people to interact with and make friends, sometimes maybe we're too lenient or too open to like who we just start interacting with. That could be a possibility too.
yeah, yeah. I know. So like, what I've done that has been helpful over the years is just introducing myself to people when I meet them. Like everybody knows when you're in that close proximity to somebody else and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, maybe I should introduce myself," and they're thinking the same thing, and then you don't do that,
Yeah.
and it gets awkward, and then you're like, you're both just sitting there like, is something going to happen? And so I just
Yeah.
as soon as I got into that point where there's that thought, should I introduce myself? I just say, "Hi, I'm Randall," and just like, you know, and
Yeah.
people are always very, very friendly about it, and and it's helpful to remember their names when you do it as well. Like one quick trick that I do is I have a little notepad application. So as soon as when I introduce myself to someone, I just make sure while we're talking to remember their name, and then as soon as we're done talking, I just write down their name and a couple facts about them. So now I have a log of
Oh, that's
like,
a good idea.
dude, it's like
Yeah.
it's the greatest hack, and like I can't believe that nobody talks about it because it's like you need to remember names. Names are the person's most important thing in their entire life, and it's like this is the simplest hack ever. You have your phone, you just type their name and a couple facts about them, and then you review that every once in a while. And the next time you see them, if you don't remember their name, you can pull out your phone real fast, look up their name, and then be like, "Oh, what's up, man? How you doing?" Yeah.
That's a good one too, because everybody has their phone out now.
Hmm.
That's a really good idea though. I never thought, I don't know, man, I never thought about that.
I
I'm not
know,
good with
dude. We
names.
should write a book about it.
Especially, yeah, you could write down like yeah, it's a really good idea. Write down where you met them and stuff. That's smart. I
Yeah,
like that one.
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is funny. I think that is a big thing for a lot of people is just the introduction saying hi, like and overthinking it because most people are happy to talk to people. Most
Hmm.
people want to interact. They want social interaction. And like, yeah, it's might not, you just have to be conscientious that it might not end up being something every time where you're gonna be like, yeah, this person's somebody I want to hang out with. But like, you know, it's a good place to start though. And I think people are always pretty open to it. I've never really ran into a problem where people were like off put. You can usually tell too if somebody doesn't want to talk. It's pretty easy to notice, I think,
Hmm.
most of the time.
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out if it's not.
Yeah. 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 So
Yeah, it's funny. Like, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you, like, what have you had challenges with friendships previously? Have you had or things that you found that worked really well with making friends?
Yeah, I think some things I found challenging was, I think, I realized this was a little while ago, but I realized in certain cases, like, there was an expectation that we should, like, with some people that I had considered friends, that we should communicate and stuff, but then they weren't doing anything. And it's like, every time I would see them, they'd be like, "Oh, why didn't you call?" And it's like, you have a phone, dude. Like, you also have a phone, asshole. Like, call me too, like it should be two-way. And that just started to really annoy me to a point of like no return. You know what I mean? Like, where like I just got to this point and I was like, forget it. I don't want to,
I
And
know that exactly, because there are a few examples in my life. People do the same exact thing. They will never contact you ever. But once you set something up, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we should totally do this
yeah,
more often. You definitely have to call me." And it's like, come on. Like, I'm not the only
yeah.
person with a phone.
And that's and it's funny because before, I used to think like maybe it was me because I know I'm bad at it sometimes. Like I get caught up in what I'm doing and stuff, and I just don't always call people. But like, it's not. I know it wasn't the case, So like, and I think also just like I think where I've been, things have gone really well at least, is also just being respectful of other people and being, understanding. I think too is important because like I know it's like I do have certain friends like who like I could think of two right off the top of my head who do like meeting up can be challenging because of like their schedules or because of other reasons for one of them. But I know that, and I know it's not it's not because of disrespectfulness. It's not because of like they're just there's other things going on. So it's like I with them I tend to be more kind of like open with it, make sure that it's some time that I have that I'm not really worried about, that if they cancel, it's no big deal. I have something else I could do. You know what I mean? Like, so not being too worried about it and not being too stressed about it is helpful because otherwise it would, and that's just, I think, a matter of how much do you value the person, and are they really worth, but it's hard. It is hard because like, I think we sometimes feel like we know people, but, people change too. And, it's like,
Yeah. And
it
so
is hard.
I'm glad you brought that up about being kind of open-minded, because this was something with I mean, I also had another incident with a friend where he started doing some illegal stuff, and I was like, I spoke with him about that. I said, that's illegal.
Yeah.
If you're going to keep doing that, we're just not going to be friends. And he was like, no, that's what I want to do. So, you know, so we ended it there.
He was
But
honest about it.
yeah, yeah. And so like there were uh basically in all three of these instances, I was like asking myself, am I being ridiculous here to think that this should happen in a friendship? But then I was also listening to some stuff, or maybe reading something, and it was like, look look at these things as if it's a gift. Like, contemplate it as if this is a gift. So I look at all these things as if it's a gift. And yeah, sure, it might be a little bit more difficult to not have a closer friend in the area where I'm living right now. But the good thing is that, number one, I'm starting to define my own values and my own boundaries. And then number
Yeah.
two, I also have that added space in my life where, for when I do meet someone great, there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect spot for a friend.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I think too, you've only been there for like, I think this is what a lot of people struggle with too. Cause I mean, I've had several friends who have moved places and I experienced going to college and stuff too, numerous times when you're moving around a lot. Like, you want to meet people that you can hang out with right away so that you have people to hang out with there because it sucks sometimes not, not being whatever. I mean, we all experience that. At the same time, though, I think good friendships, it takes time. Like, because really, in a year's time, how much can you honestly know them when you probably, A, you didn't meet them day one, probably, and B, you're not seeing them all the time. And it's like, so I think that's the other problem is like it takes more time than we want it to. So, maybe keeping it more in like the acquaintance level for a
True.
while. And then, because I know one of my good friends was somebody I actually met because I moved and he basically had the place above us. And for like the first like few months we didn't talk, but like then we just started chatting outside and then like eventually like, realized that that was a good person. Like, if I had to go out or he had to go out, like could you get my mail or something, And then eventually over time we started, hanging out outside of just like our place basically, and that worked out really well, but it was slow. It took like probably like, 2 years before we started doing, actually
Mhm.
considering our relationship a friendship, not just like, good neighbors. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked earlier about how Aristotle looks at friendship. Can you think of any examples of how existentialists or Stoics would look at friendship? Like me
Oh yeah.
personally, when I think about the Stoics, I think that they're very like virtue based. And so like
Yeah.
My idea, what they would say is that they would be like, you have to be the ideal friend, and then when you're that person, you'll find the right friend.
I think in the case of the Stoics and the existentialists, I mean, I think you could say for both that they have an ideal conception of friendship for sure. But I think practically speaking, in both cases, friendship should be a mechanism for self-development and self-betterment. In other words, like good friendship, just like Aristotle says too, I think they actually all kind of agree on this, is that through a good friendship, it should be a relationship that you actually become a better person. In the sense of like for the Stoics, particularly with character, right? So you should become a better person in the sense of your character traits, you should foster them, you should become more virtuous. That's true for Aristotle as well. For the existentialist, I mean, it's basically said differently, but right, it should be through, good friendships that you really have, types of relationships where you can be authentic, where you can, live your real life, be honest, these sorts of things that, kind of enable you to be a good person, essentially, and live a better life. And they all see them as friendship as a crucial part of a good life. I don't think any of them would say that it's not. So it's interesting because I think, it's something we don't talk about a lot when we talk about friendship, which is, is there a, what is the sort of, I guess, purpose of these types of relationships? Just think about it. We all live in society, so we can all relate to people all the time. But that doesn't mean that that's through those relationships we're getting better or that they're actually helping us. I mean, like, having good friends, somebody you can talk to about anything, somebody that's going to point out stuff. Like, that's what Aristotle and the Stoics, and, that if you know the person really well, you can point out when they're doing something bad, and they might listen to you because you know them and because they know you and they trust you, or if they do something really good and they're not giving themselves credit, the friend can point it out and be like, no, you're doing really good. Like, be proud of yourself, and like keeping them, helping your friends stay sort of on that path of virtue and doing good. So I think that's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that saying, birds of a feather flock together, and how you end
Yeah.
up being the sum total of the five people you spend the most time with. So yeah, definitely making sure that you have good people around you.
Well, it's funny too, when you think about it that way, it changes the, I think it should change what you're looking for in a relationship too. And it changes the relationship because I think it's a more mature, maybe relationship too, instead of like, but you have to kind of know yourself too, and you have to know what you want. I think this is something probably a lot of people don't do with friendships, which is like, what do I want out of this? Because I think if it's okay to, we all have acquaintances. So it's okay to be like, I like this person because they're fun to go out with to the bar or something, or they're fun to go see movies with. Yeah, that's fine. Then, but keep them in that area. If that's what it's good for, and it's like, and maybe it becomes something more, maybe not, but there's no point in pushing it because really, do you know them well enough to know that they are the type of person that would be, you know, good for you and where, you have similar virtues and you would want to be better people through that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think there's a limit on friends?
I think they are. I mean, I don't know. I always thought about that because what Aristotle says about, you can only really have like, it seems you can only have a few at most, maybe because they're, I do wonder about that because I think they do take a lot. And I think you don't need that many.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have like some really good friends, I just don't think you feel like you need it because like you
Yeah.
have it already. So, and like, and it is, it's, I mean, you have to have that. I mean, it's probably easier now because we can communicate, like, we have all the technology that makes it so easy. Whereas like back in the day, you'd have to, if you had a friend in a different town or country, it could take forever to go see them and stuff and even communicate,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by letter or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that probably makes it easier. So I think now we could probably handle more because we have that ability. But yeah, I don't think it makes sense to have like too many because really like,
Yeah.
are you really fully that person's friend? Maybe think of it
Mm-hmm.
that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look back, and I mean, barring the times when I've moved, I think that normally I've had somewhere between like 3 and 5 close friends all throughout my life. Now they're not the same people, but like,
Yeah.
generally 3 or 5 close friends throughout that time period.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
probably a good number.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know exactly what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
like, it's funny because like we have this tendency now, like people on, on social media to just have like all these followers, but not really like they're not friends. They're not people, they're not people they're not, it's like, so it's interesting. This like the quantification of it, like trying to just like get more, but not like they're empty, right? Or like wanting to be surrounded by people, but like, do you really know them? Or the people you even know? I don't know. It's seems
Hmm.
more empty than anything else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So another thing I was thinking of is what could be considered the downsides of friendship.
Yeah.
So I know like a lot of things in a lot of the self-help books that I talk about, they're like, don't depend on people too much, especially when you're going through shit. Because a lot of times, like the stuff that you need to go through, while it's great to have other people around you, they can't be a crutch forever because you have to get through it yourself.
Yeah.
So actually,
Yeah.
like having good friends is a great thing, but sometimes it can be used to your own detriment.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it's how you define friendship, though. Would you consider a great friend somebody who just is like going to handhold you through it? I don't know. Because like that might be like, I mean, we would consider that like enabling or something, or I don't know. Like if it's hindering you, I think it's probably not good.
Well,
But like,
okay, that's a great
yeah,
point because some of my best friends, yourself included, are people who have told me hard truths about myself. They've like
yeah,
reflected stuff back to me that I didn't like it at the moment, and I was like, "Ugh, how could you say that?" But it was actually it like took the balls to be able to say that, and like that's part
yeah.
of why I know that you're a good friend, and it's just because like you're willing to be that mirror for me sometimes.
What was it? Was it Nietzsche says? He says, I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something like a good friend should lay out like a hard cot, not a soft bed. Like like so like because you want the person, the person's capable of doing it themselves, living their own life. They might just need a little bit of help, and they might be struggling right now. But you shouldn't baby them, and you shouldn't like guide them completely, because then they don't find their own self overcoming. They don't overcome it on their own and learn from it. So yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, I've had the same experience too. And I think that's how you know you're good friends, but your good friends are able to say that too. I think that's the other point, right? So I think in that sense it can be really helpful, but that's also knowing what a good friend is for you and what it means and what it looks like. Because they can easily, relationships like that can easily become a crutch too, though. If you depend on people that way and they also get something out of that, then it can be really, toxic and problematic as well.
Hmm.
So yeah. And I think it's sometimes hard to know too, because we also do lie to ourselves, right? So it's hard to know sometimes when that a relationship is not really good, but we just, for whatever reason find it pleasurable or whatever and want to stay with it. So yeah.
Hmm. And especially, I always get caught in that thing where I want to stay with it because I'm afraid of being alone. You know,
Yeah.
the fear of being
Yeah.
alone. Ah.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, especially, dude, we do so much to try and fit into and change ourselves and stuff, and it's probably, it's hugely detrimental. So, yeah, it's a tough thing of finding, like, trying to know yourself. I think it's why I feel like a lot of my friendships have gotten better as I've gotten older, too. So, I mean, obviously, more time, maturity and all that helps a lot. And I think that's like something that you're lacking when you're young, and also knowing yourself that you don't, yeah,
Mm,
still
yeah,
when you're younger. Yeah.
yeah. So I was thinking we could go over kind of like some tips for people out there who may not have good friends or who may not have any friends or may have just moved or something like that. Some tips for how to find friends.
I would say, start with your things that you like, interests, obviously. So finding people that do similar things. If it's like, whatever. If it's playing, Magic or D&D. If it's, if it's reading. If it's, work, whatever you really like doing. People that like that kind of stuff is a good starting point, because that's at least some kind of common ground, right? I would also say patience. You know, let the relationship kind of develop. Get to know the person for real before you at least get a as good a sense of who they are as you can before you you know fully commit, because you don't know. I mean, but be open and be kind of patient with it.
Hmm. Yeah, those are great. Those are great tips. I was definitely thinking along the go do stuff that you enjoy doing, and then while
Yeah,
you're there, introduce yourself to everybody.
yeah,
And so, like I think it was in the Magic of Thinking Big, or maybe How to Win Friends and Influence People. But they're like the usually the most the person who everyone thinks is the most important person in the room is the person who's actively introducing themselves to the most people in the room. So it's not because,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes maybe they're a celebrity or whatever, so other people want to meet them. But most of the time, it's the person who's actually going around and saying, "Hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. Hi, I'm blah, blah, blah." And really, that's all you have to say. You just stick out your hand and you say, "Hi, I'm your name." That's it.
Well, the funny thing is, like, if you're a celebrity, it's just that people already know your name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not,
True.
yeah, yeah, that's
True.
all it is.
Yeah. So you've already introduced yourself in your movies, and then everybody else just wants to reciprocate.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then let's see, anything else for how to be friends? Yeah, I think patience, that's a great point. It does take time. Like I mean,
Yeah.
this has been what, like 38 years, 39 years in the
Yeah,
making
it's been a while.
since being on the teat. That's where it
Yeah,
started.
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So funny.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny. Yeah, I think that's one of the crucial ones too. And I think, being definitely, like, being open, because you never, I mean, I think sometimes too you meet people that, like, you can have some things in common and also a lot of differences, and that's fine. So being open, being understanding, but also, like you said too earlier, like, making sure that you have your own boundaries, having your own sense of, like, what's acceptable, to ensure that they're also kind of reciprocating, or to recognize that if they're not, because I think that's also important.
Hmm.
Because most people, you're going to end up being friends with, they're going to be people that care about you, not just about either stuff you have or whatever, or, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah, so I guess that's some good advice, good tips, a little
yeah,
talking about
hopefully it
friendship.
helps.
Yeah, I think it's a very important subject, and I know we've talked about it previously in episodes where we've talked about like happiness and depression and stuff like that. And having a good friend that you can talk with really helps
Oh yeah.
maintain good levels of happiness and get you through those difficult periods. So it's definitely something that's very important to work on.
No, it is. And I think, it's like when Aristotle said that the greatest of external goods, it was true, because I think they make life so much better, and especially like when you want to be better yourself too, because friendships, that's what I think they do. They make your life better because they also make it possible for you to be better and better your life. So I think you have to keep that in mind too, like the idea of friendship and growth, because you don't want a friendship to stay the same either. You want it to grow, with you. So I think that's important too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you have it, everybody. That is another
Yeah.
episode of the Existential Stoic podcast, The Importance of Friendships. Make sure to check us out on YouTube. Also, listen on all the podcasting services. Like, share, subscribe. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Yeah, right.